let's go to this conversation, though. Now, opposition parties, the EFF, DA, IFP, NFP, ATM, UDM, and ACDP, represented in the National Assembly, held a meeting to discuss what they call their resolve to hold the executive accountable. They want the president to be held accountable as a matter of urgency around the phala saga. Let's talk more about this now with EFF spokesperson Sinawo Tambo. Now, thank you so much for coming through. We saw that the Speaker says that she still needs more time to consider whether or not to have this ad hoc committee. And, reading what you've put out as a statement post, as you talk about these meetings and the things that you're looking for, you are unhappy with that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no more amount of time that Cyril Ramaphosa should need to answer to basic questions. The Speaker is simply playing a long game, trying to delay this as long as possible, hoping that it will fade from public discourse and public conversation. But political parties met yesterday and they reached the conclusion that we no longer want any delay or prolonging of this process. Ramaphosa must account immediately on the crimes that occurred at phala farm. The hiding of money under mattresses and furniture, the tax evasion that he has committed, the kidnapping of individuals he suspected of stealing the money, the torture of his domestic work and other suspects, and of course the concealing of the crime, and the use of state resources such as a state helicopter, communication interceptor, to track these so-called suspects. And there's no longer delaying this, and the Speaker is simply trying to play the same long game Balegambete tried to play. She's stifling debate in Parliament, beating up members, refusing to establish Section 89 committees, and she's running out of time, and so is Cyril Ramaphosa.
So does this then mean that, following that meeting, because there is a series of things you're calling for, including the Public Protector releasing the report into phala, and we'll get to that in just a moment, does this mean then that we could see protest action like we saw during the Save South Africa moment?
Absolutely. There will be a national shutdown to call for the removal of Cyril Ramaphosa from office if the Speaker, in collaboration with him, does not accede to the basic demands of accountability and transparency. We're not asking for the sky here, and we must completely rubbish the claims by Ramaphosa that there's an attempt to intimidate or provoke him as trying to make himself a victim when he's the one who said he's going to be a transparent and accountable president post the Jacob Zuma era. We're simply calling for accountability, and there will be protest action to make sure that happens.
And when one goes through, the Zondo Commission report, for example, and you go back even to the evidence at the time, Parliament came under fire for the delays when it comes to accountability about what was happening. So do you think that these delays, as you are calling them right now, that we are seeing, could take us back to a time when Parliament is seen to be lacking in its oversight responsibilities?
Absolutely. I mean, Parliament was found to not practice oversight over the executive under Jacob Zuma. As much as the EFF had exhibited protest action within Parliament and outside and motions of no confidence, Parliament as a whole was condemned. So as the EFF and the other political parties are coming to the party as well in Parliament to say that we don't want to be remembered as part of a history that shielded corruption. And that is why we've taken a principled decision as a collective to call for accountability, to call for consequences, and to call for an attempt to stop Ramaphosa from sealing the responses to the 31 questions posed by the Public Protector as well.
So are you saying then, that for you as the political parties, this is another chapter in the investigations, or are you saying you have no faith in the processes that are currently underway in order to try and investigate the matter, be it law enforcement agencies, as well as what the President says is the Integrity Commission within the ANC?
The Integrity Commission within the ANC is meaningless. I mean, he's disrespecting it himself. What we're saying is that the legislative arm of society, of South African society, must practice its oversight duties through the Public Protector, through establishment of committees of investigation, and that is all that we're saying must happen. We must ensure that these happen on our end as the democratically elected representatives of our people in Parliament.
What happens if the Speaker does not accede to any of your requests?
We're going to take her to court. I mean, she has to be compelled through a judicial process to establish an ad hoc committee to investigate what happened in phala farm, to make sure the President comes to answer the direct questions which he is avoiding in Parliament, he's avoiding with the Public Protector. I mean, the Ramaphosa had to be subpoenaed for him to respond to the 31 questions. That shows a man that is reluctant to respond because he knows he's guilty. He knows he does not have morally upright answers to the allegations which have been leveled against him. So we're going to have to include our courts in holding him accountable. And if our courts fail, that will be a testament that our society is captured by an elite that does not subject itself to the same laws that it subjects the rest of South Africa.
And so now I can't let you go because we're almost out of time, but I can't let you go without asking you this. What is your reaction to what we saw taking place in Kagiso? There was also, Ekurhuleni in Tembisa that we saw unfolding, in fact, Monday and and Tuesday. And some are saying that we shouldn't be viewing these protests in isolation because the communities are sending a signal.
Look, we're extremely saddened by the 4 deaths which happened in Tembisa. We're extremely saddened by the gang rapes which happened in Krugersdorp as well, and we're ahead as a society collectively. And we mustn't see it in isolation of a failing government of the ANC. And we must put it categorically as well that we must condemn the spokesperson of the ANC, Pulemab, for trying to shift their failures as a government to the people of foreign descent. I mean, the suspects were arrested in the gang rapes in Krugersdorp, yet we saw today people being stripped naked and beaten up after Pulemab tried to claim that they are fighting for the sovereignty of South Africa from illegal foreign nationals who stay in shacks, who cook with primer stoves, who are garden boys and kitchen girls. It's irresponsible, it's reckless, it's naive, and it's an admittance by the ANC that they've lost control of society, and now they're trying to scapegoat the social ills of South Africa to poor people who are of illegal foreign descent. And now that's the reason that they're going to apportion all of the blame of the crime, the poverty of South Africa too. It's reckless. He must be condemned for that. He must be rejected for that. And some of the violence that is happening towards people who have been stripped naked and beaten must be apportioned to him and the ANC.
Now, one of the things that though we're also hearing from these communities on the ground, they seem to also be saying that the EFF should be taking responsibility for what we are seeing in these communities because of statements like opening the border, of statements like Julius Malema saying find creative ways to enter the country if the borders are closed. And they're saying that that blame should be laid at your doorstep because they say that these illegal, foreign nationals are responsible for the crimes in their community. So some are pointing the blame at you. What do you say to that?
I think it's illogical. It's not based on any objective evidence. I mean, in an earlier segment here, I saw that people were saying Zamazamas are demanding protection fees from them in their communities. That's happening in Cape Town. It's being done by Xhosa people. It's being done by colored people. But we don't attach identity to that claims, to those acts of criminality where people are demanded to pay protection fees. But I think one thing we must also be able to interrogate with the Zamazamas in these mines is which market are Zamazamas interacting with? Because to trade in mines, in minerals or gold or copper or anything, mineral resources of South African society or Africa, is not like trading in tomatoes or cabbages. It's a mineral wealth. I mean, they have to be interacting with sophisticated and organized mining companies, not only in Africa and the continent, but in the world. I mean, De Beers was guilty of blood mining in Sierra Leone, in Liberia. So we must question who are Zamazamas being funded by, who's orchestrating and sustaining illegal mining in South Africa, who's benefiting from the illicit flow of minerals in South Africa. And if we don't answer that question, we'll never stem out whatever criminality people are saying is happening. We can't simply point at people who are the ground forces who go underground. Which multinational companies in South Africa, which mines? What is the role of Anglo Ashanti? What is the role of the mines in the Platinum Belt in illegal mining and sustaining that? Because these people are not selling these minerals to themselves.
So for you, those that are saying that the EFF statement on open borders is misguided, to say that they're blaming you, to say these people coming into the country illegally is because of what your leader has said. So is that misguided? Is that what you're saying?
Borders in South Africa, in Africa, have been porous since before the existence of the EFF. People have been coming in and out of Africa, in Lesotho to Bloemfontein, from Swaziland to Bloemfontein, across the country. There's no such a thing as a border. It exists in our minds, and there's no benefit of having a border. There's no verifiable creation of jobs that will happen from you building a wall. Because our jobs are not being taken by anyone. Our economy is not being controlled by anyone foreign from us in terms of the African continent. Our wealth is monopolized by white people. It is white people who sustain illegal mining in South Africa. It is white people who evade tax. It is white people who conduct financial crimes. So to build a wall between us and Lesotho is not going to change anyone's poverty. It's not going to put bread on your table. It's meaningless. So it's an illogical argument. It's scapegoating, but also it's based on the fact that we view ourselves as black people as inherently criminal, as inherently the problem to each other. So before I see that the problem is that the employer is the one who's sustaining the unequal employment levels and hiring foreign nationals above South Africans in order to exploit them, I'd rather blame you as my neighbor because it's easier. It's a weak enemy. It's a paper target, and that is what is being done, and that is why the ANC is taking advantage of it now.
And I'm being asked to wrap, but just very quickly, let's talk about the claims by Godrich Gadi that, the Eswatini monarch is linked to the abduction and subsequent murder of his daughter. I know that at some point you were the spokesperson for the family and, of course, that was during the funeral and all of that. What exactly is going on there? Because we even saw the Eswatini government coming, hard-hitting, saying that they are not even going to, respond to this, but also making those unsavory remarks about South Africa itself?
Look, I think the family is best placed to know what is going on internally in terms of the investigations and leads which are being followed by the newly established multidisciplinary task team, which is comprised of crime intelligence, the Hawks, and the South African Police Services. So what the father of late Hilrikati tweets or communicates to the public now, he's best placed because they get briefings every 2 weeks. So, but I do think that we must be patient with the family, we must be patient with the father and understand that he's also still grieving. And whatever he communicates best placed with knowledge of what is going on. But the Eswatini government, I mean, the interaction with Sakina Kamwendo, I think it was on SAFM, showed that they're a society not used to journalism. They're a society not used to robust interaction with themselves. He calls her his daughter. He says very unsavory things. So the character of the Eswatini government is something we've long condemned. It's a dictatorship. But things relating to the internal machinations of the investigations, the family is best placed.
I'm told we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming through. That is Sinawo Tambo, EFF spokesperson.